And if you want, you can even uh, hit the transcript, hit the AI transcript.
No, thank you. All right, so let's get this party started and welcome Stan Piskorski to lead us through the introduction to Train the Trainer.
Hello, everyone. I will first apologize for the fact that I may be coughing for some reason. I have a medicine that I'm taking to help my heart, and it turns out it causes me to cough. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Die or cough? I'll take coughing. So if I go off, do like that every once in a while, please forgive me. So welcome to the first session of the District 30 Preferred Trainer Program. This program is partially built on something that's part of the Success Communication Series called Built from Speaker to Trainer. And we have some specific objectives that we're going to be talking about. The first objective is obviously to establish a cadre of highly skilled trainers, primarily to conduct the Toastmaster Leadership Officer trainings. Now, I see I've got a bunch of folks here. Most of you are online or are on screen. And I know that if you're driving, I don't expect you to respond to this. But for those of you who are on screen, I'd like you to ask, have you ever been to an officer training that was so awful you wanted to scratch your eyes out while you were there?
Oh,
Does
yeah.
that ever happen to any of you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, good. Then your Toastmaster experience echoes mine. So thank you. So we want to make it possible to have those Toastmaster Leadership Institute officer trainings not be god awful boring. The second thing we want to do is we want to provide a resource for communication and leadership trainers for other things like district conferences, club events, workshops, and any other thing that is part of Toastmasters programming. The third thing we want to do is we want to ensure that we have some consistency, quality, and engagement in Toastmaster training sessions, because I know I've talked to a lot of officers of clubs who said, oh, I know we're supposed to go to that officer training, but it's so awful. I'm not getting anything out of it. So why should I go? So we want to have some more engagement based on the fact that people will walk away and go, oh, that was a really good session. I learned stuff and I wasn't bored to tears. And finally, we want to develop trainers' facilitation skills to support both Toastmasters education and real world leadership development. So facilitation is different than presenting. And in a little while, I'm going to tell you a story about how I learned that to be true. Now, before I get to the introduction of me, I would like to engage all of you and ask, what at least 3 things did you notice about the presentation of these objectives? Go ahead, Jim.
You kept it to a reasonable number of bullets. The bullets were basically summarized points, and you spoke to them without reading them directly.
Absolutely. There was a little bit of information, but it was enhanced by a lot more information that I added to it in order to give it context and not have it be just, if you can read the slide, I don't need to, right? Or if the audience member can read the slide, then the presenter should not. What else did you notice?
All of them start with a verb, so action.
Absolutely. Every one of them is an action, right? So that's called parallel construction. It doesn't always have to be a verb, but the construction should be parallel. What else did you notice?
Interaction, engagement.
Okay, there was engagement that was happening along the way, correct? But specifically about the actual use of the slides, what did you notice?
It's right in the center of the slide. It's not off to the left or right. It's nice nice friend in the center.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, but that's a good observation. Go ahead, Jim.
One other thing I noticed is that you presented each thought separately, one at a time. And so that way people weren't reading ahead and not listening to you. They were actually looking at the point and then listening to what your additional commentary around it was.
Right. That's called using reveals. I'm a big fan of reveals. In fact, when I create my own scripts, I will sometimes put in my directions, because I'm in presenter view, and I will put a sign that says click in capital letters, which means now we're going to change what's on the slide. So good. Those are at least some things that are starting points for making sure that the presentation or the facilitation that you're doing is engaging and is able to and able to entice people to listen. So let me just give you a little background on me so you know who is sitting here. I have been a Toastmaster. I joined in December of 1985. So I'm entering my 40th year as a Toastmaster in District 30. 40 years is a long time. People ask me, why am I still a member? And I will tell you that story, actually. I'm currently an officer in 3 different clubs. All of the clubs that I am involved with are designed to help people go to a level of speaking professionally. One club, the GoPro Speakers, is in Alberta, Canada. It is online only. In fact, all of these are, the Windy City is hybrid and the other 2 are online only. And we're designing to take people beyond fear of speaking to really using this in the real world, whether it's for work or whether it's to be a professional speaker, which is the goal of GoPro Speakers. I've been a training professional since 1987, and you'll notice that's a little different than how long I've been in Toastmasters, a member of District 30. Turns out that one of the things that I had a job interview in 1987, and one of the questions that they asked me was, are you comfortable speaking in front of groups? Now, I was a lot thinner there, and then I wasn't wearing suspenders like I am today. But if I was wearing suspenders, I would have done one of these kind of things, and I would have said, not only am I comfortable speaking in front of groups, I compete to speak in front of groups, because I was very big in contests back then. And so I ended up getting that job. Then as I was learning the trade, I was actually selling training programs, but we had to deliver the program that we were selling. And the very first time I delivered it, my boss got on the phone with me after this situation, and he said, how'd it go? And I said, oh, it was great. I connected with a lot of people. People, the things I was saying all landed, and he was very quiet. And I said, so what did the client say? And he said, well, that's not what the client said, because I'd made it about me, not about the participants. I was trying to be a sage from the stage rather than a guide from the side. And that really is the difference between being a trainer and being a facilitator and a trainer and being a speaker. So in addition to all that other stuff, I do have a side hustle. And you can actually be just like Will Ferrell in Elf, and you can say, I know him, when you see somebody wearing a red suit with a white beard and a red hat. So I thought it would be helpful to me get a sense of who you are, and also for you to get to know each other, and then also gives me a chance to put a cough drop in and put something in my mouth so that I don't have to speak. So what I'd like to do is ask you your name, your tenure, how long you've been a member of Toastmasters. If it's been a while, I just heard from Craig that he was away for a while. You don't have to tell me the whole story. I know that we have some folks here who are DTMs, and that generally means don't time me. But I want to remember we've only got about an hour, so we want to make sure this is tight. So say things close. So say things succinctly. If you're a member of more than one club, talk about which club or clubs you're in, any officer roles you've held, and why you're here. What do you want to get out of this? So I'm going to start with June.
Yes, Stan. My name is Jungu. I have been with Toastmasters about 2 years, 4 months. I'm with Club Excel, Toastmasters Club. My officer role currently is a secretary. I used to be the president of our club. Why I'm here? Because I want to learn from you and my peers here. Thank you.
Okay. So as a past president, you learn the sad face of when they say, who here wants to be president? You didn't back up quickly enough, right?
No.
Julian, let's go to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julian Wiley. I am a Toastmaster since 2009. So, what is that, 17 years going? My home club is French Toast in D30 and ABA Speakeasies in D103. I hold president's role in both of those clubs, and I'm here because I want to become a better trainer, a tech trainer to be specific.
Good. Tech training is a very challenging thing to do because a lot of people in tech training are just looking at a screen. But these days, with so much of what we do being virtual, we have to get used to training when people are on screens. Craig, how about you?
So Craig Horswell is my name. And you heard a little bit about me that I rejoined Long Grove Lake Zurich 2023. I was member 10 years prior to that. But what I didn't tell you was that I was also a member of Chief Muncie Sunrisers in Muncie, Indiana from 1986 to 1988. So Stan, you beat me in terms of joining. But then I don't have the endurance that you have. So life happens and I had to move out for a while. So you heard my club too, Long Grove Lake Zurich, and I've served in a number of different roles. Right now, I'm the president. Why am I here? Now overall, I think the training has been pretty good and sometimes excellent, but there was one that was pretty bad, and I thought I think I can do this better. So, again, time to step up and help out.
Excellent. Beatrice, are you able to participate? I know you're driving, but I don't know whether or not you can speak. If you can't, just stay quiet for a second, and I'll put you on.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
I just had Alexa respond, so
I can respond for this one. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Beatrice Allen. I am a part of Toastmasters Evanston. I've been a member for 6 years now. I've held every role except for Sergeant at Arms. I'm currently the Vice President of Membership for Toastmasters Evanston, and I am here because I want to be an exceptional trainer.
wonderful. Venkata, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. My name is Venkata Yaravalli, and I've been with Toastmasters for 2.5 years plus. And my home club is Saturday Morning Workout Toastmasters at Naperville. And I'm part of 2 other clubs, Downers Grove and Confident Communicators in Plainfield. I am currently serving as a treasurer in the home club. In the past, I've done the Sergeant at Arms role, and I'm also serving as an area director in West 71 under D30. Why I'm here? I'm working in IT, and I wanted to be a better trainer. And the first line that you said, that's one thing. Anyone comes, they should not feel weird, right? And whenever they're leaving, they should carry out saying that, wow, what a training it is, right? I want to become that kind of trainer.
Wonderful. I'll go to Jim next.
Thanks, Dan. Name is Jim Pallone. Some of you know me already. I've been a Toastmaster since 2016, so this will be my 10th year. I've held multiple roles in the clubs. I've been president, VPE, VPM, secretary. I'm currently a member of 3 clubs. ComEd Power Talkers, I consider that my home club. That was my original one. Niles Township, and also Nokia Indian Hills. And I also am a perennial guest down in a club down in Louisiana that's called Bossier Speakers. And so I attend that one as well. I've spent a lot of time in the leadership track for Toastmasters.
Yeah.
I've been area director twice, division director twice, held each of the 3 trio positions, and I'm currently the immediate past district director, so I'm in an advisor role. That's actually the best job of the 4, being the immediate past, because you get to be an advisor rather than a doer, although you do help out. And my goal here today is I spend a lot of time in leadership, but not a lot of time in actual speaking roles. I've done some speaking, of course, but not as much as I would have liked. And as a result of that, I don't have my DTM yet, even though Toastmasters International thinks I have. They even sent me the plaque. And I keep telling them, no, I'm not a DTM, but they insist on it. So I'm here to enhance my speaking skills and to become a better trainer of other Toastmasters. Thank you.
Very cool that you don't yet have that DTM. Can you get them to send me one? Because everybody thinks I am one.
It's like, why'd you send me this?
Yeah. Steve, you're going to back clean up here.
Sounds good. First name is Steve, last name Servey. I've been in Toastmasters, not as long as Stan, but probably about half your tenure, about 23 years. And I'm a member of 2 clubs, Talk of Lincolnshire and Midwest Speaking Professionals. I've held all the roles at the club and area level. The highest role I had was the North Division governor, call them governors back in the day. And while I'm here, I just have a lot of experience speaking in Toastmasters and outside of Toastmasters. I'm hoping to use my knowledge to help make trainings a little better.
Great, Steve. Glad to hear you with Midwest Professionals. As you know, they are a offshoot of Windy City.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm delighted to see that you guys are doing well. I hope you're doing well. So let's talk about what today's objectives are. We're going to spend a little time talking about the contrast between a speaker and a trainer. I've given you a little taste in relation to sage from the stage versus guide from the side, but there's some more stuff we'll be looking at. I'll give you a quick introduction to adult learning, which we're going to dig much more deeply into in a future session. We're also going to be talking about something about questioning basics, because one of the most important skills you can have as a trainer is learning how to do really effective questionings. So we'll take some time looking at that. So let's talk about the purpose of, so now we're going to be talking about the differences between a speaker and a trainer. So when you're thinking about the purpose of training versus speaking, most times, not all, but most times, the purpose of a speaker is to inform or persuade or entertain. On the other hand, the purpose of a trainer usually is to change behavior rather than just entertain and inform. Now, these days, a lot of us trainers are what we call infotainment or edutainment, because you have to be pretty good at entertaining in order to keep people engaged. But still the goal is changing behavior rather than informing, persuading, or entertaining. And so one of the things that we think of is, well, if our goal is to change behavior, we need to talk about, well, what's the purpose of whatever it is we're doing? And so we have these things called training objectives. And in a training objective, one of the things you have to learn is, well, what is it that you want the person being trained to be able to do? Now, there are a lot of things that could fall into that be able to do. And if you ever get the chance, look up something called Bloom's taxonomy. because Bloom's taxonomy, BLOOM', is a guideline to what do we mean by change of behavior. So behavior could be something as simple as is able to recognize the difference between X and Y, right? Could be something as simple as that. On the other hand, it could be something like is able to differentiate between subtle differences of understanding of a particular political philosophy. Can describe the difference between Marxism and capitalism and give you a good reason why each one of them is effective. That would be a training. That would be a training objective. That would be part of Bloom's taxonomy. So if you get the chance, check that out. I thought it was very important for me to learn about when I learned about it 20 years or so ago, and it's been really an important part ever since. It needs to be specific and detailed, uses action words, which is part of the thing that you'll see in Bloom's taxonomy, and it needs to be attainable and realistic. So those are things that we're going to talk about when we talk deeper into adult learning. One of the differences so when we get to another difference between speaker and training, it's about the communication flow. So the communication flow of speakers is from the speaker to the group. With trainers, it's more back and forth between the trainer and the people who are the participants. And as you can see, when in this goal here, we've got a small group. Oftentimes, training is done in much smaller groups, whereas the goal of being a speaker is, let me get the largest audience possible, right? And it's hard with a large audience to have two-way communication skills. So then there's the whole idea of, well, what is the method that we're going to be using here? A common model for speaking is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. How many have heard that model? Pretty common, right? It's out there. And at one level or another, that really is what we're trying to do in most every speech that we give in a Toastmaster speech. But when we're talking about training, what we're trying to do is we're figuring, well, what is it that we know already? What do the participants know already? What do they need to know? And what do we have to do to fill in the gaps between what they know and what they need to know? Because when we're talking about training, we're talking about teaching adults. Adults are not what we would call empty vessels. We've got a lot of stuff going on in our brains already. So part of the ways that we want to be doing this is making sure that we can tie into all the stuff that's going on in an individual, and knowing what they know already makes it easier for us to fill in the gaps. With the tools that we use are basically presentations tools, presentation skills. The ones that are, for those of you who have been around long enough, in the CC manual, the organizing a speech, using the right words, using gestures, all that kind of thing. These days, of course, I know that I work with a lot of professional speakers, and almost all of them use some kind of AV. So there are presentation skills that are beyond just what you do physically. But with training, you have all different kinds of tools. Flip charts, I love flip charts. I have one in my basement that I use as a reminder of things I've got to do. I also will do things virtually like we're doing today. And there's all kinds of interactive tools that we can use. I use something called Poll Everywhere, which is a delightful tool where you can have people plug into your presentation on a phone and give responses. If you've never played with that, I strongly recommend looking into it. So lots of interactive tools and techniques. Finally, we're looking at the evaluation. The evaluation for speaker is simple. Yay, great. But the evaluation for Toastmaster, for trainers is, did the behavior actually change? Turns out there are a number of ways to gauge that. And there's this thing called the Kirkpatrick 4 levels of how to evaluate behavior change. We won't be going into that at all, but it's something you'll hear about if you get involved with training. So we're looking at, did the participants change the behavior that was part of the learning objectives? Now, making sure here I'm looking at, oh, okay, I'm seeing some notes go by. Okay. Oh, look at somebody putting poll everywhere. Thank you. Okay. As I said, we're going to talk a little bit about how adults learn. A lot of times when you're working with adults, you involve them in the planning process rather than just throwing information at them. It's important to relate the material to their experience. So one of the things I asked you at the very, very beginning is, have you ever been to a session that was so boring that you wanted to scratch your eyes out? Well, that's part of the experience here. What the goal is to say, okay, how do we get you not to do that? And that's why they need you as adult learners would need to see how to fill the gaps. And oftentimes we want to look at relating it to daily work. Now, we obviously are not talking about daily work. We're talking about Toastmasters as if it were the job that we're doing, right? So Toastmasters is our second job, if you will. And in some cases, it's more than a second job for people like Jim and Patty, right? Okay, so in the training model, we're looking at what is it we're trying to do here? We're trying to do a gap analysis to determine what are the training objectives. What is it we need to do? So when Patty and I were talking about this session, we looked at, okay, if we're going to provide this course, what is it that people need to do? What skills do they need to have? Then obviously we have to create a lesson plan. So Patty and I got together and we said, okay, what are the 4 sessions going to be? And we designed the first session, and we're going to be designing the next 3 over the course of the next couple of weeks. Choosing the training methods at this point, it's mostly just about a little bit of interaction on screen, but we'll come up with some things that you'll be able to do to try to be more interactive with the group and how to apply facilitative techniques. Now, I will tell you, and then we're going to have to evaluate the program. Well, the question is, will the people that we've trained put on performances, put on training sessions that are not boring? That's how we'll know we've been successful. When people walk out of the training sessions that you have taught and they say, wow, that was wonderful, thank you so much, rather than, oh my God, don't ever let me go through one of those again. So that's kind of a basics on the training model. Once again, we're going to dig deeper in this. So the only thing we want to do today is to really take a look at one of the things that's critically important, which is asking effective questions. How many of you have heard about, I would be surprised if you haven't, indicate in some way, whether it's a reaction or a physical hand up? Have you ever heard about open and closed questions? Yay, of course we've heard about open and closed questions. Pretty obvious. What about overhead and direct questions? So, well, Patty, you were just in the session that we had last time, so you should have heard about that. And you've also been a trainer, so you might know something about that, right? So we're going to look at the difference between overhead and direct questions. So I'm going to ask Beatrice, what is the best open question you have ever had asked to you in a training session?
I would probably say, how have you been able to retain and get new members.
Great. Thank you for using, I should have said Toastmaster training session, but that is an open question, right? Who else has an example of a really good open question that you have heard in a Toastmaster training session? Jim?
What types of problem is your club facing, and what would you suggest?
Great. What types of problems is your club facing? I have just given you an example of a direct question versus an overhead question. So when I asked Beatrice specifically what's one thing that you'd heard, that was a direct question. It put her specifically on the spot. What do you think the advantage of a direct question is when you're doing a training session?
Do you get a shorter answer?
Go ahead.
Will you get a shorter answer? Go ahead, Steve.
If you ask the direct question, you're more than likely to get a direct answer versus, I think, having a general question to the audience, people may not respond to it.
Okay. Now, what's the disadvantage of having a direct question?
The person may not be able to have an answer or no.
They might not have an answer. And if they didn't have an answer, how will they feel?
Not so good.
They might feel that they've been attacked. They might feel embarrassed. There are lots of things that they might feel, but they might not necessarily feel really good. On the other hand, if they have an answer, they might feel great, and they might use it as an opportunity to wax eloquent about whatever topic you've asked them about. What's the downside of an overhead question? We already heard Steve say that. What was it you said about the downside of an overhead?
You may not get a response. People may not want to respond.
Right. You could have, as they say, crickets going on because nobody wants to be the one to volunteer. They're waiting for someone else to volunteer. On the other hand, what is the advantage of an overhead question?
I suppose it puts nobody on the spot, right? Whoever wants to answer the question will answer the question.
Right. It allows for people to participate at the level they are comfortable in participating. Obviously, the best choice is to mix them up. Mix up overhead and direct questions, and also it mix up open and closed questions. There are some times that open questions are wonderful. What's the purpose of open questions? I'm going to ask Jim. He's had his hand up a couple times here.
Yeah, I always defer to anybody else. I'm the person that will go first because nobody else wants to. So, but I'll defer to Steve.
Yeah, but Steve's been pretty good about talking.
Well, that's true.
I'll give you a chance.
True. And so the question again is, what is the advantage of an open question?
No, yes, what are some of the outcomes of asking an open question?
It allows an opportunity for the person to, explore options that are out there. They're not restricted to just one thing. They're not one topic.
Right. What's the disadvantage of asking an open question as a facilitator?
You get a long, drawn-out answer.
Long drawn out is one. What else?
You may not get what you're looking for. You may be
You
something
may not
that's
get
tangent.
what you're looking for. You may not get what you're looking for in a closed question either.
True.
What else is the downside of asking an open question?
Somebody may not know exactly how to respond and then get a negative reaction from that question and then have those feelings of embarrassment and possibly feeling attacked.
Absolutely. If you've asked an open question, especially if you've asked an open direct question, then they kind of like go, where do you want me to go here? Right? And of course, one of the real downsides from my perspective is you really don't know where they're going to go. They could go off on a tangent that is so unrelated that you have a hard time pulling them back. Right? And they could also decide to attack you. As an instructor, sometimes you get people who want to show how smart they are and how dumb you are. And that's easier to do with an open question than it is with a closed question. Which kind of question do you think is more likely to produce responses that are about facts?
Direct, closed questions.
Closed questions are more likely to be about facts, whereas open questions often are about opinions or perspectives, right? So there are times that you use each one of them. Now, I will tell you, there is a downside of any of these kinds of questions, of worrying too much about the kinds of questions you're asking. Because it turns out research has shown that even if you ask a closed question, there's a more than 50%, some say as high as 90% chance that people will respond in an open way. But there's that 10% that are very, very literal. I always think about when I was a kid, teenager, and my friends would start calling me on the phone. And of course, I'm old enough so that the phone meant was a single phone with a long cord that was hanging on the wall in the kitchen. And if it happened that the phone rang and my father answered the phone, whoever was calling might say something like, "Is Stan there?" To which my father would say, "Yep." He answered the question. It was a direct, closed question. He gave factual information. How do you think the caller felt? Then they'd have to come up with the next question. Well, may I talk to him? Well, sure. Okay. Yeah. Now, I will also tell you another story about me learning that being too involved with technique can get you in trouble. So, and this has a slight expletive in it, but I think you won't mind. When I was learning to be a trainer, it was also the time that I was dating the woman that is now my wife. She and I were both in the training business. I was newer at it. She already had been experienced. Well, during that period of time, we had an argument about something. I don't remember what. And she said something that I truly didn't understand. So I turned to her and I did this little wave like we often learn to do in being a facilitator. When you want somebody to give you more information, you give them a physical signal. So I gave her the physical signal and I said, "Well, say more about that." She turned around and gave me the dirtiest look you could imagine and said, "Don't you facilitate me, you asshole." I was being too techniquey. Don't worry about how precise you have to be in asking questions. The more comfortable you get with different kinds of questions, the more likely you are to know when is the right time to ask an open, when is the right time to ask a closed, when is the right time to use a direct, and when is the right time to use an overhead. I believe that the ability to be effective in question asking can significantly make a difference in you as an effective facilitator. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Before we go into finishing up here, we talked very, very quickly about a number of topics. What I'd like to ask is, from each one of you, what's one insight that you got from participating today? And I'll ask that as first to volunteer, but I'm going to ask each of you to participate. So, and it's a good time to steal from your neighbor. Maybe you heard something. Oh, I like that. I got that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have someone who would like to volunteer telling me what insights you got out of today? Oh, Jim's going to get off the first one. Okay, great.
Yep. I'm going to start the ball rolling so everybody can just jump on afterwards so they can overcome their fear. One of the things that I thought was interesting was you described the 4 different types of questions, and the sort of like the behind the scenes thought that I had while I was looking at that is there is really no one right answer. The correct or the appropriate methodology is that you fit the question type to the circumstance as it arises and to what your audience needs at that point in time. So you may be thinking along a certain way. You were thinking of maybe asking it this way, but you could tell by the interaction of the audience, maybe I should phrase the question that way instead. So you sort of take it, situational awareness, I guess, would be at least the behind the scenes takeaway that I got from that is that, adjust it, be kind of nimble and adjust your presentation as you go along to meet the needs of your audience better.
And you may want to, for example, there are some times when you want to aim a question at someone, you want to ask a direct question to someone because you know they'll respond. There are other times when you want to ask a direct question to someone because they've been hiding and you want them to participate. Mm-hmm. So, as you said, you've got to make your mind up based on what the circumstance is. What other insights did you get out of today? Who else was next? Go ahead, Beatrice.
I think a lot of us can be set in our ways with some of the tasks that we end up doing. For example, presentations. I didn't necessarily think before today's session of the reveal and the bullet points, because the method that I typically go about is I do the short and sweet bullet points, but I didn't necessarily think to do the reveal, which I actually really do like, so that you're able to put the focus on you as opposed to the words that are on the screen. So that is something that I'll start to incorporate. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Behavior change is occurring. We hope. We don't know. I don't have any proof yet, but it sounds like behavior change might be occurring already. Go ahead, Steve.
Question, Stan. I thought the presentation was well done, but I'm kind of the old-fashioned kind of guy. So how do you really judge how effective an online presentation or training goes versus the in-person? It's hard to relate to everybody in the audience, for me anyway, if you're online.
Now you're asking a whole different question that we will get to, but that doesn't answer the question that I asked, which is what insights did you get out of today's session so far? I will put that into I will put that into a future session on how do you do that? How do you relate online? But I'm going to turn it back to you and say, therefore, what kind of insights did you get out? You're an experienced presenter.
Right. I do echo what Beatrice said as far as how the slideshow went, how you got the ideas across one bullet point at a time versus having everything on the screen at once. So it makes the participant look at exactly what you want them to look at.
The other thing to remember, and I didn't really talk about this in slide design, but since we're talking about slides, oftentimes the people who are creating slides are creating them and looking at a screen that is only 18 to 24 inches in front of them, and they can read 10-point type. But people who are seeing them on the screen can't necessarily. There's an old trick from the days when we had overhead projectors. And one of the things that you can do in relation to making your slides really helpful is print it out and toss it on the ground and see if you can read it by standing up. If you can't read the print that is the smallest print, the print is too small. So that's an old tip from the days when we had overhead projectors. That's what we did. We'd print the thing out, throw it on the floor and go, huh, that's too small. I better make it bigger. Who wants to go ahead? Julian?
Yeah, the insight I got from this is to always be encouraging the participant. From the objective, you say you will be able to, so and so as far as the objective. So that's an encouraging tone. And then you also said the questions should not be intimidating. It should not put them into a corner. So I think the overall mood of the trainer should be always encouraging.
Excellent. I'm going to ask Venkata if you're still there because you've been in and out. Do you have some insights you were able to pick up from today? You might be there, you might not be. Go ahead, June.
Yeah, my takeaways are number one, communication flow. Before I'm kind of like speaker, right? But now I know it's really like a parallel back and forth between trainer and trainees. Like actually you demonstrated today between you and us. I appreciated that. And another thing about like method, I think that's very important to know your audience first, right? Like the training I went to as a trainer is a secretary. So first question I asked them actually is like open, not open, it's closed, but it's like overhead questions because I want to know my audience, right? And then I go there to, like you said, fill the gap. That's very important. So that's something I didn't think of, but now I'm like, oh yes, I did that. So thank you for that.
Excellent. So what I hear you saying is that what you realized is you were doing this, but you didn't know you were doing it. They call that unconscious competence. Okay? There are different levels of competence. The worst one is unconscious incompetent. So great. I think I got it. Craig, did I get you?
No, not yet. So one thing was just the distinction of the speaker informing, persuading, and entertaining versus the trainer changing behavior, not just educating or entertaining. And then just the categorization of the questions. And what for me, I think one of the things I've always struggled with is running a discussion, an effective discussion, potential losing control, as you pointed out, some of the examples, and how to do a good job of managing it. So that's something I need more of. And as you said, experience is going to be the key for that.
Yeah, I have a couple philosophies around control. If you want control, give it away. That's kind of a weird thing to be thinking about, but sometimes instead of trying to control, let the group control itself. And you can do that by asking effective questions and working with facilitation skills. I also was reminded you used the term educating versus training. And I have a wonderful friend, a friend of mine that I haven't seen in a while, but I really appreciated his perspective on this. He says, education is what you do for future use. Training is what you do for immediate use. And he said, for example, if you have a teenager in school, would you rather have them take a sex education class or a sex training class? That was a pretty vivid example for me, and I hope it's probably a vivid example for you. We learn a lot through humor, and I believe that that's another skill that we can leverage in our training. You know, I don't try to write in jokes most of the time. I just quip and work off what people have said. Okay, so their next session is 3 weeks from now. Is that right, Patty? It's the third week of the month. You can come on.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Third Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. I'm sorry. Yes. I've been in a meeting all day.
It's okay.
The 18th.
So are there any other things that, you know, Steve indicated that one of the things that he would find helpful is how do you know you're connecting to people online, which is an issue that we have. You know, COVID changed the world. Before COVID, very few of us presented online. These days, I used to do workshops where I'd go out to a particular place and, you know, have a 2-day workshop. I haven't done I do an in-person session once a year now at my conference. I have an annual conference. Other than that, everything I've been doing for the last 4 years has been online. So that's a legitimate question. As to how do you know that you're connecting? How do you know that you are actually making a difference and that they're following along with what it is you need them to do? Are there any other topics that you'd like to make sure we take care of?
I loved your example today of showing how to get people back on track. That was great.
Did I do that?
Steve tried to take you way off course.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I do think, but I don't even remember. I've been doing this so long. I am what they call a subconscious competent. I don't have to think about it anymore. It just comes out. Okay, so in the meantime, if you get the chance, look up Bloom's taxonomy. Really a valuable kind of a resource. And if you also get the chance, look up Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. Not homework of any kind, just helpful stuff that you might find useful. And with that, I say we are done for the day. Thank you so much for being here.
I have a quick question. Will we re-register for each subsequent session, or will we use the same link as we got today, or for this one?
You will need to register for each one.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think if you register for the next one, it covers the next 3.
Okay.
This was an add-on session because we wanted to give the opportunity to more people that said they were interested at our trainings recently. So,
and what that means is that we'll probably have more people on the screen next time because we will have merged two sessions. That creates a whole different set of dynamics. This is a nice size group. I'm looking at seeing 8, and then maybe depending upon the connection, one more. I had 9 on the screen. I mean, it's kind of like, what was the name of that TV show?
Brady Bunch?
Yeah, the Brady Bunch. 9 people is the Brady Bunch. But we're going to have 2 Brady Bunches, if not more than that. And so that makes it even more challenging to keep track of all the people who are participating. We'll see how that goes. Any other questions or comments? Pardon?
It's going to be great.